So good morning and welcome everyone. We're starting the session now. So welcome to this ecclesiastical webinar, which we, Directory of Social Change, are delighted to be delivering. Lovely to see some familiar names and organisations for this 8th webinar. This is a small part of the support that Ecclesiastical offers charities. Whether you are an ecclesiastical customer or not, have a look on their website for information and resources, previous DSE webinars, fundraising updates, and blogs. We'll put some links to this and to the DSE website in the chat function if you'd like to find out more about us. Please use the chat function to network with colleagues in the sector, and please remember to use the Q&A for your questions and not the chat. So my name is Valerina, and I am the Training Services Coordinator for our in-house training team at DSC. And today I will be facilitating and chairing our webinar. The webinar is recorded and will be uploaded onto the Ecclesiastical Hub in the next few days or so. We do not send any slides separately, and we've invited questions for the panel in advance, and we have been inundated. So we'll answer as many as we can, but we also want to hear your questions throughout the presentations. So just to remind yourself, please use the Q&A function on your menu to submit questions. Myself and Catherine Cooper at Ecclesiastical will be monitoring and collating them and do what we can to get as much information from our panelists as we can in this short time that we have. And as you know, the time will go very quickly. So we have 4 panelists, and the order of presenting is Ian, Jill, Chris, and Sue. And so I'd like to welcome Ian, our first panelist.
Thank you very much, Valerina. So I'm Ian. I've been working at DSC for 7 years now, and I've worked on 4 of our Guide to UK Company Giving publications. So today I was just going to talk to you about some changes within partnerships that I've noticed while doing this research for the guides, and I'll try and highlight them with some good examples of corporate support along the way. So we've been publishing the Guide to UK Company Giving since 1998. And when you look back over these old guides, a lot of the information is solely related to cash donations, and there's very little information on partnerships. However, if you have a quick look back at the most recent 2 or 3 or 4 editions, a large proportion of the companies had some form of partnership with a charity. And by partnership, we're basically talking about any relationship that goes beyond a simple one-off cash donation. So this could be Charity of the Year, employee fundraising, employee volunteering, or working together on a large project. We're also seeing a lot more partnerships that are being described as strategic partnerships. These tend to be long-term, close relationships between charities and companies, usually with quite a large investment from the company. And they're really working very closely together on a single issue. And the growth in partnerships, there's not a lot of research on this. The one bit of research I did find was from the London Benchmarking Group back in 2017. And they served 180 of their corporate members. And in 2017, 70% said they would give through strategic partnerships. Whereas in 2007, only 30% said they would give through strategic partnerships. So that shows quite a big growth. And what we're seeing more and more with these partnerships is that they're often made up of multiple elements of support. So, for example, the partnership between Jones Lang LaSalle, the property company, and Crisis. So this partnership has seen over £500,000 raised through employee fundraising. And then the company provides advice to Crisis on rental values, and has many employees volunteering with Crisis. The partnership also involves a large element of pro bono work, with the company developing a toolkit to allow charities to identify potential rental markets. We're also seeing that many companies have partnerships with multiple charities. So some, for example, might have a partnership for each theme of their CSR policy, where you also quite often see a company that has one main national partner and then multiple regional partners. And from a fundraising perspective, this is quite important to think about, because many companies, particularly sort of financial companies or solicitors or accountants, will have large offices, large headquarters in London, for example, then have large offices in many cities around the UK. And these offices very often have charity committees, which can make decisions on local partnerships or recommend partnerships to HQ. And of course, if you're able to form a relationship on a regional level, then very often these partnerships can grow into bigger national partnerships. So why have we seen the growth in partnerships? Well, a number of reasons, really. I think big problems such as climate change, homelessness, mental health, perhaps require solutions outside the normal one-off cash donation model. Also, consumers are being more and more aware of what their favorite brands are doing, and they're willing to pay more for products that are seeking to solve these social problems. And finally, companies have realized that they have a range of assets they can use. So rather than just fundraising, companies can make a big difference by using other assets such as products, pro bono, skills, technical know-how. And probably the largest asset, well, one of the largest assets at a company's disposal is its employees. And employee volunteering is an excellent way of charities and companies working together and engaging staff in a partnership. However, what we often see is that there's a mismatch between what charities need and what is offered by companies. So very often volunteering opportunities are one-off, unskilled opportunities like litter picking or painting fences, things like that. Whereas many charities, what they really require are skilled long-term help in areas such as business skills, marketing, fundraising. And also volunteering can be quite costly for companies in terms of employee time off, and also for the charities in terms of administering and supervising the volunteers. So that's something that's not often considered. So really, companies and charities are now thinking more strategically and in terms of skills when developing partnerships. So a good example of this, I think this is a few years back, but I remember reading about it at the time, was the partnership between Deutsche Bank and Sported on their Sport Educate program. So the program helped disadvantaged young people by running employability and education programs along with sports activities through sports clubs around London. And the Deutsche Bank volunteers were a real integral part of this program because they lent their expertise in so many different ways. So they became trustees, they gave professional advice and support on finance, marketing, communications, business planning, provided IT skills, HR advice, and they also volunteered with young people by supporting education and employability workshops, and also provided one-to-one mentoring to the children. So overall, 300 Deutsche Bank employees volunteered 2,000 hours on the program. So this is a program that I think really utilized employee skills really well. And then the next thing I want to talk about quickly is reporting. So as a researcher, I could probably talk for a good few hours about company reporting, but don't worry, I'll try and keep this bit as concise as possible. So overall with company reporting, it could definitely be a lot better in terms of the number of companies reporting and the quality of data that they provide on their giving. However, there are one or two sort of changes that have been happening in the last 5 to 10 years that could be relative to partnerships. So companies are starting to report more about impact. So rather than reporting the total hours spent volunteering on a reading program or the total amount they spent on this program, they're also starting to report on outcomes. So this might be the number of children they help to learn to read. And there's numerous benefits to reporting on impact. There's many stakeholders involved in a corporate partnership. So good reporting can help companies become more accountable and engage with their stakeholders. It can engage and inspire supporters and possible new supporters, and assist companies and charities in sort of gauging whether they're meeting their strategic aims. Something we rarely see within impact reporting is how the partnership has had an impact on the company. So, for example, volunteer program might have improved staff satisfaction by 50%. And it's this sort of information that could be really useful for charities, particularly as evidence when they're seeking out new corporate partners. And another change in reporting I've seen in the last about 8 years, I think it's been in place, is reporting on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in annual reports and CSR reports. So the goal of this is to address global challenges, including those relating to poverty, inequality, climate change, peace and justice. And actually many companies have adopted the goals. A report by KPMG showed that 60% of large companies in the UK reported on these goals. But I'll probably take this figure with a bit of a pinch of salt, because the quality and the depth of reporting on the goals can vary a lot company to company. So, for example, Sainsbury's annual report usually has 7 or 8 pages devoted to its corporate values and how they align with the goals. And in fact, recently I saw the Ocado Foundation's grant program. Any applications to that actually had to meet five of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So in the future, we're probably going to see a lot more reporting on the goals. So when researching or thinking about potential new corporate partners, it's definitely be worth seeing whether companies use and report on these goals, and thinking about how to incorporate the goals into your proposals. And then just the final thing I want to talk about is collaboration. So this is something we don't see very often. Groups of companies or groups of charities coming together to work on a social issue, single issue, sorry. And in fact, when I was looking for examples of this, I could only find 1 or 2. But collaboration is a really great way, pooling charity resources and company resources. They can have a far greater impact than just 2 organizations working together. So I think probably we don't see as many collaborations due to difficulties of multiple organizations working together, because of competing priorities and difficulties in communication. But one really good example I did manage to find was the Money House program. So this was a collaboration between JP Morgan, My Bank, Hyde Housing Group and the Barclay Foundation, and it delivered financial training to 16 to 25-year-olds leaving the care system, also those in sheltered housing or young people that have offended. So the Barclay Foundation and JP Morgan provided the majority of the funding. The Hyde Group provided strategic input, and My Bank brought experience in training. And then they solved the communication issues that I mentioned earlier by a number of ways. They had quarterly formal catch-ups. Each partner had a nominated representative that sat on the governance board for the project. And they also regularly shared project monitoring and co-designed the framework for measurement. And this project had a real impact with their attendees. They were 3 times less likely to have rent arrears than their peers. No one to date who has completed the course has ever been evicted. And it also helped landlords reduce the costs and secure more rent with fewer arrears. So this definitely shows it's possible to overcome these problems and collaborate successfully. And hopefully in the future, we'll see a lot more collaborations like this. So to quickly summarize, over the past 10 to 20 years, the number and nature of partnerships has changed, and it's very likely this will continue in the future. And the changing environment of partnerships is definitely something to consider when you're developing corporate partnership strategy. So thank you very much. And now I'm going to pass you on to Jill.
Great, thank you very much indeed, Ian. And that's really helped set the scene, I think. So just to introduce myself before I tell you what we're doing, he said, my name is Jill Jolly. I thought I was pretty unique, but if you're trying to find me on Twitter, there's several of us. So I'm Jolly, Jill Jolly. So I need to keep that jolliness going. I'm also easy to find on LinkedIn if you want to connect. I know a few people have been doing that already. I'm Director of Achieve Consultants and an associate with the Directory of Social Change, the DSC. So I run, my consultancy delivers consultancy, needless to say, hence why we're called Chief Consultants, but also advice and guidance. I'm involved with quite a lot of training, mentoring, coaching, and taking on specific projects. I've got a background in psychology, and I've been working in the professional fundraising and not-for-profit arena for over 30 years. You need to remember, I started this when I was 12. And I've been watching some of the questions coming in already. And I know, Laura, don't panic. We are going to talk small and big. And also some of the things I'm going to sort of share with you, even though I'm going to use a couple of examples of one that is definitely big, but it's easily to scale down. So don't despair, because I know what lots of charities are like when you're small or regional or locally based and you think, oh goodness, all these nationals have got the sort of, head and shoulders above us. But, just constantly think, is this scalable? How could this work for us where we are? So what I'm actually going to be focusing on, because again, I could be here with you for loads of time, and I know it's great to reconnect with many of you. I've been involved with all of the past ecclesiastical and DSC webinars. So if you go to that charity hub on the ecclesiastical website, there's a range of other webinars that we've been doing. Valerina mentioned we've done 8. This is our 8. So you say do link into some of those, because there's lots of other real practical help and hints and tips as well as helping you understand the environment in which we're actually working in. So I say I could talk forever, but I've got a limited time. So what I'm going to be particularly focusing on is about what you ask, how to ask, and linking that to the motivations of those companies. And that's not unusual for those of you who are well versed in fundraising. Key to anything is we actually need to understand our potential donor, our supporter. What is it that they're looking for? Ian, in his sort of comments, kept using the word partnership. And that's so important. It's not just us going on groveling needs, begging for money. We're actually saying we've got some great opportunities that working together we think will benefit us both. And so it is very much looking to see what a company might be looking for and what we as a charity or not-for-profit, A, have got to offer, and B, what will actually benefit. I laughed before when Ian said about painting fences. I know one charity I've worked with over the years, they have a room that they allow corporates to paint, because so many people say, we want to come and do some painting. And they say, we don't need any painting. And just because somebody wants to do some painting doesn't mean they're very good at it. So in the end, what they do, and sometimes this is what you've got to do in order to start building a relationship, especially if it's being reactive to a company approaching, they say, well, actually, yes, you can come and paint the room, and think, right, while we've got you, we can talk to you and we can find out what else that we can get involved with. But then they have their own team of volunteer painters who then come the day after and repaint the room with donated paint, of course. But it's about sometimes building a relationship and sometimes getting a foot in the door and building up a relationship. So before we can ask, and again, I can't spend too long on this because I want to give you lots of tips about asking and link that to some real examples as well. But to say, because we need to think about this partnership and the win-win, it's so vital that we actually understand the company. I always say fundraising is divided into 3. It's about the research and understanding our prospective donor or supporter. It's then about approaching them, asking, inviting them to get involved. I have loads of different phrases for that. And then the third one is about thanking and updating. So this is it. So I don't know, many of you as fundraisers out there, or if you're trustees, just remember, fundraising isn't just about asking. There's 3 essential component parts. Because if you ask too soon, before you actually understand the company that you're approaching, you'll ask for the wrong thing. And what's that going to do? it's going to demotivate everyone. Morale drops rather than saying, yes, we got it. So it's absolutely vital to really understand the companies that you're thinking about approaching. Understand their decision-making process as well. Again, Ian mentioned something about, what happens. Is it a vote by everyone? One charity, and it was only a small local regional charity that I was involved with. We'd had an opportunity because of someone we knew. We got our foot in the door, and we were actually invited as one of 3 charities to actually present. To them. And once they agreed, yeah, we were still on the shortlist. He says there was actually, I need to sort of correct that, there was more than just 3, but we were then sort of narrowed down to the shortlist. And then it was going out for a charity, a company-wide vote. They had a few weeks before they were actually going to vote. So it did give every charity the chance, if they wanted to do some engagement. Now, I just need to stress this was pre-COVID. But what we did is and it was actually a national organisation, but regionally based. And this was a local charity covering the county. So again, Laura and people like you said, it's not any good for just the big nationals. So this is it. We got our foot in the door because we knew someone, and we managed to get down to that shortlist of 3. And in that vicinity, because they have their main offices in a town centre, and they say this is pre-COVID, but what we did is every single sandwich shop that we was in sort of a certain radius, we actually got in, we contacted them all, popped in, had a chat to them and said, we got this really important vote, and we knew that some of the employees from that company would come in to get their lunch. So they agreed. They tended to put it in most bags anyway, but some of these, lots of this company, they actually had lapel badges. And again, lots of their clients used to know who their, some of the sandwich makers knew who their clients were. And we got a chance to put some information in each of those sandwich bags. Now, we didn't say, oh, we're a poor charity, desperate for money. Please will you vote for us so that we get lots of your dosh? I don't think that would have had any effect, would it? And I know Chris is sat there in a bit of a smirk saying, no, Jill, useless. No, but what we did, we shared some information about the people we were helping, the difference we were making, and then letting them know that they could be part of bringing about change to real people in their community. Guess what? We got the partnership. So this is it. Sometimes it's not just what you say, it's how you actually do your asking. So quick recap though, when you're doing your research, find out what they do. Is it straightforward donations from the company? I know some of the things that Ian talked about, he was talking about making an application. Many companies have a grant making process, and I'm sure Chris will talk about what Ecclesiastical does with that. They may even have a separate trust where you don't approach the company, you go straight to the company, to the trust. So for example, Lloyds Bank, and they only support small charities, so don't worry out there, anyone small, you don't go to your local Lloyds branch, you go to the trust directly. Asda, they've got a foundation. Yes, Asda's the store are great. They've got community champions. I know, again, when COVID hit, I was working with a county-based charity, and they just, the Christmas before, supplied a load of not Easter eggs, what am I saying? It was mince pies for something that they were doing at Christmas. So again, Chris talked about gifts in kind, sometimes pro bono, and they just wanted to get involved. But also one of the benefits to that is Asda has a foundation, and it's not like Lloyd's, you don't go straight to the foundation. In a way, it's like acting as a recommendation. The local Asda store needs to have a relationship, and they almost act as a referee, and they work with you on your application, and they then submit it with you. So, just really understanding how they work. Obviously, we've talked already about volunteer hours, but again, just think about what sort of volunteering do you want? Can it add value to something? Do you want new trustees? That might be something that a company can actually get involved with. Can they help deliver some of your services or add some extra? Can they provide mentoring to some of your clients or even your staff? Gifts in kind, pro bono work, there's lots of different things. There's employee fundraising as well. And then many companies then will even do match funding, where for every pound that's raised, the company then matches it up to a certain amount. Lots and lots of companies actually do that. So yes, some of the big companies like Google, Vodafone, I could reel off lots. And so you don't need a relationship with the company, you need a relationship with a person. A friend of mine works in HR. She's down in Cornwall and she only actually works 4 hours a week, but she works in HR in her local Morrison's. Her son actually works for a charity and she's not really into fundraising, but was really excited. She said, I'm doing this thing for John's charity. Will you get involved, Jill? Yeah, that's great. And then I said to her, I said, but Lynn, you work at Morrison's, don't you? And she said, yeah. I said, well, tell them, because whatever you raise, they'll match fund it. So she was absolutely thrilled because, again, not a very sort of experienced fundraiser, but great. She actually raised just over £1,200. But you know what? She was really excited and got a real buzz when Morrison's then said, yeah, and we'll match it. So her £1,200 plus became 2,400 and a bit more. So, again, we don't need to really get into the company. We just need to talk to the people close to us, and not just us as fundraisers or involved in this process. Ask everyone around. Who do you know? Where do they work? Do they do match funding? Could they actually help open a door? So that's giving you a bit of scene setting, but let's sort of move on to thinking about that asking process, because I've not got that much longer. And I know some of my other fellow speakers have just said, come on, Jill. It's all right, Chris, I was allowed a bit longer. So hang on in there. Because what I actually want to share is don't diminish the power of words. Words move hearts, and hearts then make that decision about opening the purse strings. So what I want to just get you thinking, and I actually think fundraising is a bit of a mindset. Some of you who've been on other calls, other webinars with me might have picked this up from other things that I've shared with you before, but I just want to really just concentrate on a few key words, because there's some powerful words and phrases that we should use when asking, whether that's in an application form that we're completing, whether it's a freestyle proposal that we're writing, or whether it's a presentation or a pitch that we're making to 1 or 2 people within the company, or whether it is a whole group and a committee. So what I want us to keep thinking about is why do people get involved? Why do companies give? So we want to understand that early on and think about what you have got to offer. It might be you've got some natural synergy with the company. Let me give you a lovely example here. Wiper blade manufacturer Trico has pledged £1 from every sale through its distributor A1 Motor Stores to a Bolton-based charity, Speed of Sight, and they host driving days for disabled people. So far, it's raised 6,576 through its sales and employee fundraising activities. So again, for all the likes of Laura out there, see, it's not just big partnerships. Yeah, fine. Morgan Stanley and the Teenage Cancer Trust have just ended a charity partnership that began in 2019. Their target was £1 million, and they actually raised more than 1.4. But it can go up and down, and you can scale some things up, you can scale some things down. So again, it's a national company and it's a national charity, but I'm sure everyone listening to this now can think, yeah, I can scale that up. I can scale it down to fit with my charity, because the retailer Next is working in partnership with Parkinson's UK, and they've launched a range of home accessories and T-shirts featuring designs by particular artists. And all profits from the range will actually go to Parkinson's UK. Well, again, it could well be you've got a local artisan market. You've got some local artists who would help you perhaps produce a T-shirt, and they might be then sold. I know we're into sort of Christmas fair territory almost, but just think about scaling it up a little bit. Think about a local retailer. They might only have 5 branches, but how about, 2 T-shirts that have been designed and they actually take them on? but we need to keep thinking, what's in it for them? They're not just going to do it because, yeah, it would be a nice thing to do. Think about what they're looking for. Are they looking to improve their image? Are they looking to, involve their customers, or do they want to motivate their staff? So understanding what companies are looking for is so vital. So before I wrap up, let me just share these some information about what I've said and some of powerful words that should be some of your best friends when choosing your wording, whether you're speaking it or whether you're writing it. So my first one is you. Definitely one of your best friends. What we want to do is connect our company with the solution. So rather than say, you give us the money and we'll do something amazing, let's try and create something that makes the company think this really is good for us and is something that we want to get involved with. Because you grabs your potential donors' attention, and it helps people and companies to see themselves as part of the solution, which is so important. We constantly say, and again, Ian sort of touched on it before, is companies want to make a difference, regardless of all the other motivations. They don't want to put themselves out to do something just to retain the status quo. So if you start, looking at what you're saying and say, think, are we putting a lot of us and we in it, or could we change it to you? So for example, and it's a good one to think of because Marcus Rashford, I know we've got quite a lot of people from the Northwest with us today. You'll gather from the accent, that's where I hail from, but is that I work across the whole of the UK and live in Suffolk. So, but instead of writing, we end childhood hunger, or our charity has the solution to the problem of hunger in the classroom, let's just think about putting you in there instead. You can end childhood hunger. You are the solution to the problem of hunger in today's classrooms. That's a lot more powerful. Let's now look at the word donate. And you might say, crikey, Jill, we want people to donate. But the word donate kills the donation vibes. Instead, use a word like partner, give, support. Donate gives the impression that you only want or need their cash. But words like support and partner, followed by the name of your cause or your particular campaign, really can increase the level of support significantly, because it's about inviting companies to be part of a relationship. It's also part of building up our authenticity and trust, and hopefully a longer term relationship. So let's just have a look at some other phrases we use. So instead of using things like we hope to, or we long to, or our goal is to, that lacks passion and confidence. Is your project really worth investing in? It also implies you don't really have a concrete idea for when you receive the funding and the support from that company. So your confidence or lack of it is contagious. So what we need to do is write or speak and invite confidence along with it. So we need to avoid negative phrases when asking for support. So one option might be, and many of you might have done this, without your support, we will not be able to end hunger in our schools. We could improve that sentence by saying, you can put an end to hunger in our schools today by partnering with our school lunches project. So what we need to do is use smart but simple wording that captures imaginations and invites companies to be part of the solution, because that way they feel they're different. They are making a real difference. So again, we might say, we're hoping to raise £50,000 to ensure every child who needs it has a healthy school lunch across our county. It's a good start. We then might go on to say, please consider a partnership and helping to raise half of what we need to do that. My last one is that, because I know Chris is eager to get involved, and again, I'm going to get daggers from everyone else. My last one is because. Just think about that. It's a really strong word. It's a little word that packs lots of psychological punch. We're not going to do it like many parents. Stop doing that. Why, says the kid. Because I said, no, we don't mean it. We need to put a little more thought into it than that. So let's just, think about even just things that you might have when you're in the office. Excuse me, I've got an awful lot of photocopying that's queued up for this printer. Is there any chance that you could stop all your hundreds? And somebody will turn around and say, well, I sent my stuff here first. But if you turn that round to say, excuse me, is there any chance you could stop it and let my thing come through? Because I've got a deadline for a funding application and I need some material to include with it. And it's in the queue. And all of a sudden, some of you might realise, yes, because is that strong word. So include because in many of your asks, because that then really helps. So instead of writing, today I'm sharing little Simone's story with you, we can make that more compelling. Today I'm telling you about little Simone's story of being hunger because she needs your company's help so she and her classmates aren't in this situation again. So I hope that's given you some food for thought, some words to really think about, and to really help you think about how to ask and to make it powerful, but where you can link it to the motivations, what you understand a company is interested in. So how better to start? Like you, we are passionate about the lives and opportunities for young people. So immediately we're sparking somebody's interest. So I hope that's given food for thought and no doubt loads of questions. And if anyone's interested, I've got a few more powerful words I can share. So thank you very much indeed. Lovely to be with you. Hope to join in with the questions. And I'm now handing over. The baton comes to you, Chris. Grab it quick.
Thank you very much, Jill. And thank you, Ian. I cut out then, actually. So hopefully I'm back on. It was typical timing. Thanks very much for the opportunity to be on the webinar today. So my name's Chris Pitt. I'm Head of Responsible Business at Ecclesiastical. We are a different kind of financial services business. All of our available profits go to charity. So doing good and doing social good is what we're all about. So I'm really pleased to be talking to so many fantastic charities here today. A huge welcome to those charities that we've already funded and supported that are on the call today. Thank you for what you're doing, because we're providing the funding, you're doing the great work, and we really appreciate that. And welcome to all those charities that we're yet to support. I think our ambition would be to find a way to support you in the near future. I was just going to say a few reflections on corporate giving from our perspective, so from the other side of the fence, and then tell you a bit about the structure of our corporate giving approach. So at least you get an insight into how one corporate does it, I guess. And at the very end, and you can tell what I'm doing here, I'm going to try and encourage you to listen to it all. I'll tell you how every charity on the call today is in with a chance to win £1,000 through the giving programme that we've got live now. So wait for that at the end. So first and foremost, a few reflections on corporate giving, and I think I'll cover some of the things that Ian and Jill have very, very ably expressed. We're absolutely spot on. I think I'd say four things. The first thing is to say that it's hard. So I want to extend some real kind of empathy and sympathy to you all. You have a really tough job to do. And why have you got a tough job? Because I think we don't make it easy. Corporates don't make it easy. We can be very different in our approaches. We might not have the resources internally that you might imagine. We can be unsustainable in our approaches. Ecclesiastical definitely is not committed to that. But in particular with COVID, I think we've seen a huge influx of funding, and I would be concerned about whether that is going to continue. So first point is hard. So I really do sympathise. Secondly, and this is a point I think Jill and Ian made really ably, put yourself in our shoes. Without pretty much exception. I think corporates are much more thoughtful in their giving now than they ever have been. So understanding what a business is into, what is its social purpose, what social purpose is it under pressure to demonstrate, is a real kind of winning territory. If you can tap into that, that is what an organization is going to be interested in. And at the moment, lots of questions about well-being, mental health, climate would be remiss not to mention. I'm surprised we haven't mentioned it yet. So corporates fulfilling their climate responsibilities is of huge focus at the moment. So if you can connect what you do to that social purpose, that's potentially very powerful. Thirdly, I just say that funding is one aspect of giving, and definitely echo again what's already been said. I've been saying for a while that Charity of the Year is dead. It's a very two-dimensional, traditional model of you shuffle a charity partner next to you and they're who you funnel your giving to. I think organisations are looking for more sophisticated ways to work with charities, more engaging ways, more ways that are a real partnership. And then fourthly, I just say that people make the most powerful connections. I've found that with the charities that we've worked with, and the people that really do believe in what they're doing and really understand what we're doing crop up time and time again. And I know, sure, some of them on the call today. And we're talking about corporates and giving structures, and that's all great. But behind that is people. Behind every organisation are CEOs with backgrounds and families and interests and a place that they live and a community that they're interested in and causes that they care about. So keep people in mind, I think. So now I'm just going to spend a few moments talking about our giving strategy, which should be on the next slide. And as I said, this is at least an insight into how one corporate does it. And I think we're confident that we think this is a great approach. So what you can see on there, just a few words on a slide, is the crux of our approach, and that is this: that we thinking about how we give, so how we distribute funds, is as important as where it goes and what kind of cause it supports. So our giving program is structured around three main parts, and that's me, my business, and my group. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about each of those approaches and how they work for us. And again, just to reiterate, I think the crux of it is that we're a business of less than 2,000 people. So again, you might have thought we're one of the UK's largest corporate givers. I oversee a fund of more than £2.5 million. But we're less than 2,000 people. I am the giving resource in our organisation. But through the business that we are, through our people, through those getting over 2,000 people, through the customers that we've got, through the partners that we work with, we're really connected to communities everywhere. We are really close to causes everywhere. So that's what I think we really believe in tapping into, and not being arrogant enough to think that we know what difference we need to make. Well, actually, we need communities, we need our partners, our supporters to help us see that and understand that. So firstly, on the next slide, me. So we've got a very well-developed employee giving program called My Giving. And again, we've mentioned it here about that is a source of funding and support for charities. We believe really passionately that giving has got to start with individuals, because there is no greater feeling of connection and commitment and passion and support that you feel for a cause when you're involved with it, when you're doing it. So we believe giving has got to start with our people, and that's why we put giving in their hands and we give them the power to support causes that they really care about. Not that we decide they should care about, that they care about themselves. So our giving scheme is 4 parts. We give a personal grant, so that's £125, or we double it to £250 if they volunteer for the same cause. And that's to give, as I said, to any cause that they care about. So we give to hundreds and hundreds of charities, very small donations, but to causes that our employees are really connected to. Then we match every charitable effort, I guess, is probably the broadest way to say it. So we 100% match fundraising, and we 100% match payroll giving. So we want to really foster that spirit that anything that you're doing for a good cause, we want you to feel our support behind you. And then we do give volunteering time, intentionally very flexible, so at least a day of volunteering, to really, again, flex on the points we've heard already, that volunteering in the past, perhaps the old model of it has been digging and decorating, the poor charity, finding something for corporate volunteers to do, because understandably, who wants to turn away corporate support? But our volunteering program is trying to be more sophisticated now. It's saying that actually, it might be a few hours here, it might be half a day there, it might be out of work time, it might be a more professional position, professional advice and support, it might be a trustee and so on. So much more sophisticated in how you can support the cause that you care about. And then at the next level, my business. So this is an area of giving which is a call for all of our businesses to think about their customers and communities and how they can be closer to them. And this is an area that I think we've agonized over in the past a little bit about the directing of giving. We believe in giving to as many causes as we possibly can, but also this balances that with directing giving at causes that are really close to our customers. So on the next slide, there's some images of one of our lead partnerships, which is with the Prince's Foundation. So we are the insurer, the protector of more listed and historic buildings than anyone else, by virtue of insuring pretty much every Anglican church in the country, but also properties like Chatsworth House and Royal Albert Hall. So we've got a real interest in protecting historic buildings. It's the nature of what we do and what our business is. And I think that's where that second point, I think that I mentioned earlier on about this tapping into social purpose comes in, because I guess in the past it might have been perceived that that's our job, and we do that, and then we do our charitable giving after that. But they're one and the same. If we're able to fund training schemes for crafts people to be able to better repair and restore historic buildings, it is helping that sector, but it's helping us. It's helping our business. So there's no shame in that. I think that is where a partnership really sings and really works, because it has some real kind of mutual benefit. And then the other example from a business giving perspective on the right hand there is a scheme that we've got called Closer to You. And this is a scheme that we run with our broker partners, our insurance brokers. So we sell insurance products, and we have insurance brokers in the middle talking to customers to sell them. And we give them a donation to give to charities that they care about. So I guess it's a similar model to our employee giving scheme, in that we're not judging, we're not deciding, we're actually asking for their help. We're saying, you are based in your community, you are close to our customers, your employees really care about causes. What are they? How can we get our funding to them? So we give them each a donation, which they can distribute to causes that they see fit. And then the final kind of layer of our model on the next slide is my group, and this is where our Moving for Good program comes in. So this launched a couple of years ago, and I think there might be some beneficiaries of it on the call today. It had some big objectives. So it's a £1 million program, and we wanted to achieve real breadth and depth. So we wanted to reach as many good causes as possible, so spread our giving as widely as possible. But then we also wanted to support some charities with some real depth and some real sustained giving, with a real eye on delivering some impact against some really important issues that we share an interest in. So how do we do that? Well, we don't try and do both at once. I think is probably the simplest thing. Split the pot in two halves. Half the pot is £500,000 donations to any cause, and in that spirit of how we give, we don't decide how that is distributed. we ask our partners, our supporters, our brokers, our employees, our communities to nominate the causes that we would support. And as a result, the 500 donations we've given year on year have been so diverse. Charities everywhere doing every kind of good work, which is absolutely wonderful. But then the second half of the pot is that depth. So we have giving panels within each of our business divisions, which specifically look at some themes that we're really interested in as an organisation. And I mentioned earlier, climate is one of those that emerged from our investment business for the first time this year. So we've been giving to environmental projects for the first time. But those panels look at those themes and actively try and attract and target the kind of causes that we think are going to achieve tackling those issues to some depth. We also involve some third-party ambassadors, so some people from our sectors, so some heritage experts and some education experts, and some and that's so that again we can be more directing in our giving, so that from their connections, from their understanding of the needs in the community that they're in, they can direct some of the great causes, so they can be the recipients of our funding. So that's moving for good, and that's the kind of final level of our giving. And the last thing I was going to mention, which I hope has kind of kept you interested for these couple of minutes, is an opportunity to receive some funding from us in the very near future. So as part of our Moving for Good programme, we also run a very similar programme to that first 500 at Christmas called 12 Days Giving. And we give £120,000 donations in the run up to Christmas. So in the 12 days running up to Christmas, we announce 10 a day. The principle is exactly the same. Any cause can benefit. So anyone listening now can be nominated and could be receiving a donation at Christmas. It's a draw, which I think is a rather lovely thing, a rather fair thing. We do receive a lot of nominations. We did have 19,000 on our first day, actually. So it is a big pot. But we've seen charities receive a donation if you received only one nomination. So it's a very kind of fair process. So yes, that's what I'll leave you with. I hope that's given you a bit of insight into how we do giving. I hope that's given you a bit of encouragement that we're the kind of organisation that would really love to support you in some way or another, whether it's through funding, whether it's through opportunities like this, so advice and support to help you be a better charity and do more of the fantastic work you do. So thank you very much. And I think over to Sue now, a beneficiary of our funding.
Thanks very much, Chris. So yes, I'm Sue Clark. Good morning, everyone. I'm head of fundraising at Chum's Charity, which is a mental health and emotional wellbeing service in Bedfordshire. I've worked in 3 sectors previously, so hospices, disability, and now mental health. That's been over the last 20 years, and I would say the last 10 years have been more focused on grants, but equally corporate grants as well as the traditional grants route. So I'll give you a whistle-stop overview of how I've worked in corporate and what has worked for me. I'll speak really from the point of view of small to medium-sized charities, but I'm sure much of it will still apply to large charities. And I'll split it across corporate donations, staff fundraising, and then finally corporate sponsorship. So corporate donations come via a variety of routes. It could be via personal introductions, or it could be via existing schemes, or corporate volunteering initiatives, as we've heard of earlier. And I looked up the top 10 corporate donors. We've worked with 6 of those 10. It's not something that I've targeted over the years, but I thought it was interesting that just working through sort of what was available, 6 of those have come to the fore out of the 10 there. So I'll quickly run through some of those. And Lloyds Banking is at the top. It's the biggest corporate donor to the UK of £64 million. And I've tried to work with them, but their criteria is age 17 plus. So if you fit that bracket, then definitely apply to them. They have got money to give, and they're very forthcoming with how they can help you. Santander comes in at number 3. We've worked with them both ways, through the grant schemes and also via a branch in Dunstable. That was very much orientated around one of our emotional wellbeing, mental health and emotional wellbeing services, where they had a member of staff take advantage of the baby loss service and really want to help. So they worked with us for 2 years as a result. Coming in at number 4, Ecclesiastical. Thank you, Chris. We are a current recipient of the Movement for Good Awards. It is funding 4 of our recreational therapeutic music and football programs over the next few months. So fantastic funding, and just when it was needed, because a lot of those young people are sitting on our waiting, or would be sitting on our waiting lists otherwise. So they are now getting immediate support. So fantastic timing for us, and yeah, thank you to Ecclesiastical. And we have also been previous recipients of the £1,000 awards by sharing that on social media to encourage people to nominate us. Coming in at number 5, Hsbc. We haven't had any success yet, but we are in current talks, so we're hopeful on that one. Number 6, Marks and Spencers. We've had both Charity of the Year at 2 branches, and we've had a couple of volunteering exercises at our offices. And number 9, John Lewis. We've had both Gifts in Kind. We've had the Token Scheme beneficiary, and importantly, we've had one of their partners volunteering with us for 6 months. That's a regular scheme that they have, really helpful, and it helped us to set up our overseas challenge program, which we didn't previously have. We didn't have enough staff to really spend time on that, and that triggered off a trip to Kilimanjaro and then to China. So really worthwhile and worth thinking about. So she worked with us 2 days a week for 6 months. Number 10 is Royal Mail. Not in my current role, but when I was at the hospice, we were involved in a National Charity of the Year programme with Royal Mail. So yeah, without targeting them, it turns out that we've worked with 6 out of 10 of those. So always worth looking at. Doesn't matter whether you're big or small, there are opportunities across the sector there. And I was just going to give couple of minutes to Amazon. They get a really bad press, but we've had a really great experience with them at the Richmond branch in Bedfordshire. So they approached us. They were looking for a mental health charity to support. We went through a selection process and were picked. We received a £5,000 donation up front for 2 of our services that they particularly felt they had an allegiance with. And going forward from there, they supported us with weekly donations. You do need a van in order to collect those donations, and it's stuff that would go to landfill, but it isn't bad quality stuff on the whole. It's really good stuff that can be repackaged. It's where staff have taken a pen out of a pot of 200 and they can't resell it. It's drinking chocolate, which is packs of 10 where 1's missing or 2 are missing. Really good quality stuff. But we had so much stuff, in fact, that we had to open a pop-up shop to manage to get through it and sell it on for sort of half the going price, which was really successful in our community. We had to stop that. It wasn't that we wanted to, it was the fact of the pandemic that we had to give up some of our office space. We had no room for storage, and we didn't have the audience anymore down at Rest Park. So that has come to an end, and everything is now going to the food bank as far as I'm aware. Corporate foundations is also part of that. Definitely worth Googling who those top foundations are. We work with 3 of them, so Garfield Weston, BBC Children in Need and Henry Smith. They have been really remunerative for us across our services, trauma, the recreational scheme included. And I would say if you're a small to medium-sized charity, That shouldn't stop you from making approaches. All of these foundations have money to give, and most of them look at all sizes of charity. And they may have a minimum ask, but that minimum doesn't stop you applying. It's really fair. And always ask staff and volunteers for their connections. That has helped me in the past. It's helped me get into some of those bigger charities, especially the London ones. There's someone who knows someone. It's not always how you present, but it helps you get a foot in the door initially, and then gives you the opportunity to make that application. For small charities, I would say don't sort of waste time trying to come up with the perfect corporate partnership. I would say just follow initially where the money is. There are plenty of corporates who do have these schemes. So I would go and push on the doors that are already opening rather than start to cold call, just to try and create an opportunity initially. Let yourself build up an experience, have those past partnerships to talk about, and when you go for new partnerships. And just keep trying. When you get the opportunity, just find a way to make it work for you. It doesn't matter if you don't have the best affinity with that corporate necessarily. It's getting that passion across to them of why you want their help and what difference they can make. If your charity if it's a bigger charity, if you've got your own marketing team, then I would say yes, do spend some time using their creativity and knowledge and ways of working, and get them to select some of those words that will really help you open those doors. But not many of us have our own marketing team at the small or medium level. So that level, I'm thinking of TV campaigns and advertising on the underground. Some of those are fantastic campaigns, but they're really in the realms of the big charities. Staff fundraising, that area, I would say make sure you need ears and eyes to the ground. I would say try and make sure that you're not the only one looking for those opportunities. Make people aware that staff, volunteers, families and friends, that you're out there looking. Put it out on social media from time to time that you're looking for new corporate partnerships, and why, and which services particularly would benefit from those. Sometimes it will, and you don't always know what the criteria are on those, so don't just rule yourself out. Stay with it, keep plugging away, and you don't know who's on the panel either. I would say that we've had a couple of opportunities where there's been a really strong link between one of our services and an experience from one of those panel members, and I would say that's definitely been the case that has won us the partnership. Once for our baby loss service and once for the Bedfordshire Suicide Bereavement Service, where that recent experience has clicked, and there's just the passion of that person has made sure that we've won the opportunity. And networking, I think, is really, really important. I do it definitely through the Chamber of Commerce. If you're not a member of the local Chamber of Commerce, I would join if you can, and find the networking group that works for you. I'm a member of Women in Business Bedford. I found that has helped me enormously. I've been a member for 9 years, but over those years, other members come and go. I've had fantastic links into grants through that, into St James's Place, corporate donations, events and participants, sponsorship, really all about building relationships, making those connections, and they become friendships and become a really good, reliable source of funding. Keep in the habit of making Charity of the Year applications. Even if you don't win, you'll be raising awareness, and you'll probably be on the invite list next time round. So I've applied for Charity of the Year of Luton Airport. I can't remember how many times. I've never been successful. They do choose the larger charities as a rule, so I don't keep much hope of being successful, but it doesn't stop me applying. I get to know who is on that panel, and I think other opportunities have come out of it. And when you get shortlisted, that's the time to really invest in doing some homework. See if you can find company employees in your network who you could ask questions of, how their other partnerships have worked in the past, and even make a phone call to the leaving charity of the year, just to see what really worked for them and if they've got any top tips, because they're not going to get it again for another 2 years at least. So normally they're really quite happy to share some information. So as much as affinity and mutual benefit are important, I would also say sort of hard work and commitment to the partnership are vital. Once you get involved in that, you're being chosen, I would say building trust, finding ways that work, setting out what the joint expectations are up front, and agreeing how you'll work together really will be key. And then lastly, I was going to look at corporate sponsorship. This is a huge range of levels. It can start quite small, but it can end up being quite meaningful. So we've currently had a flurry of children's football teams approach us and want to have our logo on their playing shirts. We've agreed that all of them that have approached us can do that, and all of them are actually then actively fundraising for us, and they're raising thousands. It was a really unexpected level of interest. It wasn't something we were targeting, but one has led to another, and it's across Bedfordshire now. So they're not only raising awareness, but they're raising some really meaningful funds for us. I think that's come about through our Facebook page. We've got 6,500 supporters on there. We do work on the other social media channels as well, but I would say Facebook is our key area of interaction. It's where we get the most response and the most offers of support. So we also ask companies to sponsor various aspects of our community events. So that most recently has been community golf days, and then outdoor cinema events. And we've had the greatest success with house builders recently, because so much building is going on, where we've been able to tie that into a local development. That's worked well for us. And then also a utility that had some really bad press and had to pay a fine. They came on board recently to our outdoor cinema in Leighton Buzzard, and they sponsored us for that. So they're looking to get good press. So strange way of looking at it, but if you're aware of companies in the community that may be struggling for those reasons, then yeah, give them a call and make an approach. It's all worthwhile. We've got a 25th anniversary ball coming up next year, so definitely I'll be making some corporate approaches ahead of that. And I would say definitely have the confidence to make the ask. Just try and get your passion across to them. They probably don't know much about you. Use your opportunity to sell exactly what your charity does and why you do it. They're looking at lots of different applications, and the better that you can come across and sell yourself and why you do it and what the benefits are to those service users, then the better you'll do. I've quite frequently taken a service user into a Charity of the Year presentation, and when I've known in advance if there's an allegiance to a particular service, we've got 5 different mental health and emotional wellbeing services, then I've taken a service user from that specific service to explain the good it did for them, for their family, and how they're now coping, whereas they previously were in crisis. So that's what I'll leave you on, just getting that passion across and assuming that they know nothing. You really need to start from scratch and sell yourself, sell your charity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's great. The panel has been answering quite a few of your questions within their presentation, so that's wonderful, and thank you for that. So we are running late, but we will do our best to answer as many as we can in that time. So bear with me one moment. I think the first question that we can pose to the panel would be, so what would the panel advise in terms of undertaking due diligence to ensure reduction of risk of reputational damage? Would anybody like to take that, please?
Tricky one there. Shall I start then? I know Sue mentioned about working with a company that had some sort of bad press, and it is always a very difficult one. I sort of did some work with an environmental charity who were working with a company who polluted a local river. So what they did, though, is they built it into achieving the charity's objectives is to work with the company who polluted the river to ensure no further spillages and pollution occurred. Obviously, the company through the Environment Agency had to, make good anyway, and there was a fine and all sorts of things. And what we actually did was we said that they couldn't attract any publicity for us working with them about the spillage, but as they improved, we would look to actually sort of, co-promote some of the good things that they were doing subsequently. So again, I think it is about not just rolling over and saying, oh, they need some good image. And as a result of that, we then get dragged down with them. And so I think it's a very, very careful balancing act and really assessing it. But also every charity should have an acceptance and refusal of donations policy. Part of the with the code of fundraising practice, and you may want to include some things in that as well. So it's not, if they come to you and say, oh, it'd be great to partner with you, and say, well, actually, it's almost that famous, it's not us, it's the computer. It's saying no, we've got a policy that won't allow us. We can let for 6 months later we could do something. So it may be you want to review things in terms of the due diligence, but also in terms of your own policies, as it's good practice to have that anyway.
Thank you,
that
Jill.
gives some help.
Thank you. Another question would be, how do you make sure that partnerships don't end up burdening an already stretched charity in terms of its internal resources to manage? Can costs of a partnership be included?
Shall I take that one? Obviously it does involve quite a bit of work, and I would say if you can estimate how much it's going to take of your time, whether you can involve volunteers or whether you can employ an extra person for the 1 day a week to make that work. I know you're spending some of the resource, but some of those corporate partnerships are worth so much. If you can do them properly, it's worth investing that time and effort to get a bumper return. And I would say that was my experience when I was working at the hospice. We did have access to some great partnerships because it was done across all of the hospices across the country. You were able to get the biggies, and they were rolling in thousands by the end of the year. So a little bit of expenditure is worthwhile if that is the case. Because you want to do it well. You've had this opportunity, you definitely don't want to lose it. So invest in it. You may find volunteers will help you in that, even volunteers from the corporate partnership to help you manage it yourself. But you may find other local volunteers who've got various expertise that can help you too.
Thank you, Sue. Another question to the panel. What are some of the keys to good practice of evaluating social impact when working in a corporate partnership?
So one thing I would say about social impact, especially for smaller charities, is actually lots of really good toolkits available that have been provided with by various charities and organizations. So if you are a small charity, then I would definitely always try and find a toolkit to help you. So social impact, it's quite it can be quite straightforward. So you're basically asking how much did we do, how well did we do it, and is anyone better off thanks to our work? So they're the basic questions that we need to be asking, but we also need to think about what key questions we have. So they need to be sort of related back to the aims of the project and related back to the theory of change, if your charity has one. So it's also really important to prioritize what questions you're asking. If there's questions that you already probably know the answer to, then it's probably better to focus on other sorts of questions. It's also important to make sure that the questions you're asking and the data you need isn't too onerous for your charity. So quite often corporates say we need this, 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 and this, but very often you haven't got the capacity to do this evaluation. So I would say make sure it's not too onerous, and you can definitely answer those questions.
Thank you, Ian. So another one, how long is too long to wait around for a partnership to materialize? That is, for companies who have never given before, how much time versus like how much time a small charity should spend on pitching proposals, educating. So again, it's kind of like how long would one expect to wait for a partnership to materialize?
I always say a good skill of any fundraiser, and we'll come back to Chris because Chris might have some ideas as well, because I know there's a few people in the chat that have been saying they've applied to ecclesiastical as well. But I would always say is one skill of any fundraiser is never give up. And there is a difference between persistence and pestering. And so, yeah, never give up. And someone did share they waited 5 years and it got there. So, you know, it's not on your job list for every day, every week, but every so often just keep in touch. And see if you can find links and ways to get involved. But also it could well be because you've not got any evidence, a track record of working with corporates. So some of those things that I know some of you said, oh, it's all the big ones. I still, you know, around me, it's all the big charities get all the deals. Just think small. You know, Chris has shared with you some of the things that ecclesiastical are doing. So, you know, it then means you can say we've already had a corporate partnership with ecclesiastical. Just think if you apply to become, you know, Waitrose or Tesco's, you know, for the coin scheme, you can then say we've had support from Tesco's. So sometimes they're looking for a track record because lots of corporates sometimes worry that you're just coming to them with a begging bowl and it's just one way. You know, really sort of share what you're doing and sound really positive and upbeat, but always share with them what still needs to be done and how they could get involved. Anyway, I'll shut up and hand over to Chris because I think he wanted to add something to that.
No, I think all good points there. And I'd probably come back to one of my first points about kind of fundraising resilience. You know, I am in awe and admiration of the job that you guys have got to do. And it is tough. I think you've got to maintain a bit of an awareness of what corporates are doing, because again, I think things change. There'll be a shift in funding available. There'll be a shift in the interests that an organisation has got. So that might be when that door that's slightly ajar actually opens fully. But I'd also, I suppose, keep an eye on what corporates are broadcasting. Because from my perspective, being one person trying to channel or giving through all these programmes, the big announcements, the big campaigns that we've got, that's the opportunity for you to get tapped into it and to look at what those are asking for, look at what those are offering, and try and get involved with those. But yeah, keep stick at it and be resilient.
Thank you. So another question was really around how you know, the smaller charities are left with making new corporate relationships, partnerships from scratch, which can be hard. So what approach would you suggest as an initial contact? Because they're saying that often, you know, the bigger ones are tending to get the support more so than the smaller ones. So for a small company, what's the real kind of couple of real good nuggets to advise on how best to approach as initial contact?
It might be best if I pitch in first. I think probably similar things that we've said before. You know, look at the mechanisms that corporates have got on offer. So look at how they're inviting and trying to channel their giving and attract it, and see how you fit into any of those funnels. And think about who you know and where you might know them, A bit of inside info is always quite good, actually, to be honest. So if you know someone within an organisation, you talk to any member of staff, you know, at Ecclesiastical, and they'll tell you about what giving we do and how we do it. So that might be a good route. So I think that the challenge for a smaller charity potentially, you know, is greater because you've still got to look at all those channels and opportunities for accessing funding. But I think it's the same kind of process of assessment of, you know, where do we fit? What is a corporate offering? What's our in? And what's our opportunity to get a slice of it?
Okay, thank you. And so what would you say are some of the most appealing mutual benefits for a corporate partner when volunteering opportunities may be limited, stroke non-existent?
I guess this might be for me again. And again, I suppose volunteering is an evolving topic. Again, it's moved away from kind of digging and decorating to be more sophisticated, to be more focused on professional support and advice. So practical and professional, we coin that phrase a lot. But still, we haven't got huge resources internally to manage it and facilitate it. So it is still a bit of a conversation and finding the right charity. For me, the right charity with the right resources internally there has resulted in the strongest volunteering partnerships for us. So charities that have come to us and they had someone really hotly managing volunteering. And when I say that, I mean delivering a great experience for employees. And that is not just kind of, you know, the logistics of it working well, but really getting an experience and a sense of what your charity does through the volunteering experience. I think that's not to be neglected, because actually, if you get an employee to support you, if you get them to experience your work, you've reeled them in. You know, you've really got them connected. So using your volunteering opportunities as effectively as possible, would result in the best result for you. And I think is an example of it'll lead to other things. It'll lead to further funding, further volunteering, further support.
Thank you very much, Chris. So this is going to be the last question. And I wondered if I could aim this at Sue. There's a question here saying, with the corporate approach for the anniversary ball, are you asking the corporate to fund the cost of the ball? And would you approach more than one corporate for this?
Yes, so we're not looking for one sponsor, we're looking for table sponsors. We're splitting it down into smaller packages. So we haven't actually started it yet, but we will probably be looking at gold, silver, bronze sponsors. So that's anything from £100 up to £1,000, that kind of ask. So not sort of massive asks, but to get more and more people involved, and then hopefully they'll book tables for their employees as a result. Maybe a bar sponsor for the welcome drinks, that kind of thing, maybe also for the band. So it's what we've done in the past is just to break it down. So we're not looking for £25,000 as such. We're not of that ilk that we can make £300,000 on our ball. We're looking to make maybe £30,000, and that will be a fantastic result if we achieve that net. So yeah, different things for different people, but we're in awe of those big London charity balls that have all of the investment bankers attending and throwing money at them, but that's not us.
Thank you very much, Sue. So I'd like to ask Jill if we could sort of do a wrap up of this session, please.
Thanks very much indeed, Ballerina. And I know there's loads of you been putting in the chat and also in the Q&A. Can we have some more of these words? I can't reply to you all individually. And as I say, we've not really got the time now on this session because obviously, you know, we've been a panel of speakers and lots of really fabulous and interesting, insightful information that each of our member of the panel has had to share. So watch this space. You never know, there may be something coming up in the future. But just to reiterate, Ecclesiastical is an incredible organisation doing fabulous things to support the voluntary and not-for-profit sector here in the UK. You know, they've got so many different programs, you know, that you can apply to. And I just love the 12 days of Christmas. And rather than it being after Christmas, it's almost like, what better than, you know, rather than having a chocolate advent calendar, just think, right, we're going to go for one of these 12 days in the build up to Christmas. And I tell you what, you get one of those grants and you'll feel far better about everything than if you've just eaten, you know, perhaps, you know, that star, a little bit of chocolate. So, you know, do really have a look at all their programs, because it said that's one of the things that's great, that there's something out there for everyone. And whatever your cause is, you fit into one of their programs, more or less. So, you know, really do have a look at that. But also, you know, Ecclesiastical is so committed to the voluntary sector, not only in the grants program, but also with the charity hub. So as I mentioned before, you know, this is my 8th webinar that I've been involved with. And I have a feeling there may be some more to come. Who knows? Who knows? So, you know, keep your eye on this. Mark Ecclesiastical Fundraising Hub as one of your favorites, you know, as one of your websites as a go-to place. But also, you know, the Directory of Social Change, the DSC, it's here to support organisations working across the voluntary and community sector. They do a range of different things. I'm an associate and I deliver a range of different training with them. But also, you know, there's a fabulous amount of different things, not just on fundraising. So again, you know, do check out their website. But also Ian shared some of his insights. You know, one of the things that the DSC is so famous for is their directories and their publications, the research that they undertake. So again, if you're trying to sort of, you know, where do we start? And I know many of you are actually at that point. Where do we start? My God, it's all out there. What do we do? So, you know, it's another go-to place. Again, they sort of regularly publish research. They do blogs with different findings. So, you know, just have a look and see what you can tap into. There's lots of free resources, as well as obviously some paid for resources out there as well. So, you know, the other great thing to do is you've all been busy networking, you know, and Sue shared with us before about sort of, you know, her links with women in business, you know, joining chambers of commerce. There's so many different things that you can do to actually network. Yes, for corporates, but also just remember, we sometimes put different donors, supporters in little silos because we think, oh, is this community? Is it corporate? Is this a trust? Do you know what? They sort of entwine. You know, is there a major donor? Is it this? Again, just have a good look at who's already involved with you. And I know Chris mentioned that in his talk, one of the questions. You know, there's people around and resources I know are really precious when you're, you know, fundraising might not even be your own hat. It may be corporate is your hat, but there's so many other things to actually do. So think about the resources that exist across your organisation. Because I'm a huge believer that everyone in your organisation is both the fundraiser and the service provider. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to stand outside Tesco's with a collecting box. And most people, you know, say, oh, I can't get involved in fundraising. It's almost, you know, that thing that, you know, it's down the end of the corridor, or used to be, and you've got to have a clove of garlic with you if you go anywhere near. Think of that lovely song out of the musical Cabaret, Money Makes the World Go Round. We can't ask, as fundraisers, we can't ask companies, trusts, individuals, whatever. We can't ask for support unless there's an issue that we're dealing with and we're providing our potential supporters and donors an opportunity to get involved in providing a solution. But also, it's chicken and egg, which comes first. So we can't ask without that, and us as an organisation doing something wonderful or having the plans once we get the money to do something wonderful to solve that problem. But this is where everyone also is a fundraiser. And it's not about, to say that collecting can, but it's about perhaps spending 10 minutes on a Zoom call, meeting a potential corporate supporter, just explaining some of the work, perhaps sharing a case study. I shared with you before about Simone, who goes to school every day and her tummy's hungry. It rumbles because she's so hungry. You know, to actually, not as the fundraiser share that story, but how better, you know, someone who's meeting Simone when she comes to the Breakfast Club, get them to share the story. And even better, if it's not breaking any sort of confidentiality. Even, you know, encourage Simone to share her story. And that really gets to the heart of things. So everyone has got a role to play, both in fundraising and providing the incredible work that all of the organisations who are out there, and the 140 who are still left with us, you're doing incredible work. Keep going and success will come to you. Thank you all very much indeed. I hope you found it useful. We've certainly, and I'm speaking on behalf of my colleagues with us on the panel, I know I've certainly enjoyed sharing some time with you, and I know from their faces that they have as well. So thank you all very much indeed, and good luck. But it's not luck you need, just sock it to them. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you, Jill. And thank you again to our wonderful panelists and to Ecclesiastical for the supporting of our sector in this way. Thank you so much, everyone.